As we go back to the mid-90s, when first-person shooters were fast-paced around the time, the genre was expanding, bringing new things to the genre after 1993's Doom, with games such as the Quake trilogy, Half-Life, Duke Nukem 3D, Shadow Warrior, and an underrated favourite of mine called Blood, made by Monolith Productions, who later went on to develop the Fear games, which are fucking awesome. Trust me, I'll review these games at some point. Quake, on the other hand, was a game that was an FPS classic, but at the same time, it wasn't as popular as Doom. Quake itself was one of the first games to ever bring some new features, such as 3D models with enemies and props instead of sprites. And let's not forget the room with a room effect that the Quake engine was capable of doing. However, today we're not going to be reviewing Quake, as that is for another video. There was a game that was made a year later in 1997, called Chasm the Rift. Or maybe as alternative title, Chasm the Shadow Zone. I think Chasm the Rift is a better title, to be honest, in my opinion. Which was published by GT Interactive and developed by a Ukrainian company called Action Forms, who would go on to develop in the Carnivore series, which is a series I've never heard of until now, until I went onto Wikipedia page for Action Forms. As time went on, as two other titles, such as Viva Sector Beast Within and Cryo Status Sleep of Reason, being the most well-known Action Forms game that's mostly played by Let's Players on YouTube. Recently, Action Forms hasn't made anything else aside from two mobile games, and the last one being made in 2011, which was Carnivore's Ice Age. And that's about it. I mean, who knows if they're actually going to make a new game anytime soon. Most people have never heard of this game, as there was no hype surrounding this game as it came out, as this was the company's debut game. Chasm the Rift was a typical 90s fast-paced FPS, where you pick up ammo, health packs, blasting your way for a shitload of monsters or mutants or whatever, find keycards, and run and gun like the good old days, whilst the game gives you an interesting storyline that gives you a good enough reason to kill them. I mean, would kill them anyway because it's fucking fun. Now, the player takes on the role of an unnamed marine, whose mission is to stop the so-called Time Strikers and the other mutant beings invading different time epochs for taking over Earth in 4 episodes, each consistent of 4 levels ranging from modern day, ancient Egypt, medieval times, and back to the modern era. All these levels involve dark corridors, and often like that of catacombs and crypts with enemies such as scorpions, gunmen, gestures, lionmen, and other mutated demons. So far as originality goes, the monster designs and attack patterns are actually created for a game that's referred to as the Quake clone. Except for the pilot, or whatever the hell it's called though, which actually looks like the Fiend from Quake. Except this time, it doesn't leech onto you or something. The monster designs and attack patterns are actually created for a game that's referred to as a Quake clone. Since there is a feature that stands out in the game being that you can blow off their limbs, disarming enemies with powerful weapons such as the Bazooka Men, which can do so much damage to you when they fire their bazooka at you when your health is nearly 0, as well as shooting their heads off. It was funny how when I was a kid I used to play Quake a lot with my dad, until I was restricted from playing it until I was around, 8 or something. But when I was 7, I first got Chasm the Rift at a PC game shop. And since you shoot an enemy in Quake, you could either shoot it down to its death animation, or you could blow it to smithereens with a bazooka, or even a double-barreled shotgun. Now with this game, as I mentioned before, you could either blow an enemy to smithereens, shoot it till it dies, or even blow its fucking limbs and head off. So if I was going to say which game was more violent, then I would definitely say Chasm.
You said that this game was violent, so that automatically means that you're an SJW. Talk about being a hypocrite much?
Wait, funny memes yes, actual jokes no? What are you doing here? I said that Chasm was more violent than Quake. I never judge if kids or anyone else should play this game. Jesus, get your fucking facts straight, kid.
Also, I'm disappointed that you didn't even use any funny Lazy Town or Nutshake memes in this video that we normally force in our videos, because it's funny. What people like Geological Reaper and Blaze of Arcana do in the commentary community. What the hell does this video have to do with Lazy Town and the Nutshack? Well, it's your fault for not using any memes. I mean, why don't you use memes instead of actual jokes to use with Bazooka 79?
Well, whatever, I got a review to do.
Nutshake. B movie, but every time it says the word B, it plays a Nutshake theme.
And the level design does the job right when it tries to create the themes in the level and keeping the dark and somewhat scary atmosphere in a fast-paced game, even though a lot of FPS games were fast-paced around the time the game's release. Now, the power-ups such as the Reflector are okay. I mean, they're nothing really groundbreaking like in Quake, when you actually have something like invulnerability and core damage, but it at least is something original. The weapons, I can't quite say the same, since most of them do look and feel ripped off from previous games, such as the rifle, which has infinite ammo, that for some reason has a fast fire rate for a rifle, and the super shotgun, which is obviously ripped from Doom and Quake, the rocket launcher, which for some reason looks like it shoots grenades instead of rockets, and some sort of BFG weapon that shoots like a grenade launcher with cell ammo instead of splash damage like Doom did. These weapons could have been much better though. Well, at least we do have a few other awesome weapons, such as the blade gun, which looks more like you're holding a disc instead of firing an actual gun and actual blades. And we have the laser crossbow, which you can shoot enemies' limbs off, whilst it looks more like a scepter with 2 claws than an actual laser crossbow. But at the end of the day, even though these weapons are kind of ripped off from other games, they're not bad to use, since they do actually have good damage and fire rate against monsters, and it does feel good to use at the point. Now, the audio is pretty good, with the enemies sounding scary and hostile, but again, going back to the ambient soundtrack, which really gives off a dark and scary atmosphere with the visuals to go with it as well. Which is funny, since I couldn't get the soundtrack to play on my version, since I never had the disc in at all times. And even every other FPS game had like an industrial metal or some sort of new metal soundtrack though. This is actually ambient based, a lot like Quake is. Now we get to the graphical aspect of the game, the graphics. Now, the graphics were actually pretty good for... Hang on, when did this game come out? Jesus Christ, it's nearly been 20 years since the game's released? Damn, I mean, I feel old. Now, for the time, these textures and lighting looked really good for DOS for its time. It does use software rendered graphics, and it really helped with running on some people's computers whilst they couldn't get Quake to work. And this was when the cutting edge 3D FX cards with the OpenGL support were cutting edge around the time, and that's saying a lot for a game with better monster animations and detail put in than Quake did. Now, when the game was released, it received mixed reviews whilst praising the better visuals and animation. It did suffer with a lack of 3D environment and geometry. I mean, fuck knows what engine this is running on, since the company has never even revealed that information to the public. What I can tell, the engine is kind of like Ken Silverman's build engine. As you can tell, the walls stay at a vertical line. Even though the game has all these fancy 3D models and shit with the 3D slip geometry, sliding and swinging doors that you can walk up to instead of pressing U's, and the 3D geometry around the ceilings and walls. But however, there were some limitations in the engine. Unlike Quake's engine, it was not possible to do the room over room effect. And no, the 3D floor over floor doesn't really count, as that isn't technically a room you can move around in, even though the developers still made it look like what it was supposed to. Now, it even has its own map viewer, even though I wish some other games had that feature though. Yet again, after games like, the build engine games, we didn't have that kind of feature in any other games though, which is kind of complicated since we can't really find anything that's... Sometimes when you're moving around in newer games though, it's kind of like a maze though, where you get kind of lost really easily. With the use of the map, you would be glad you could even have it in the first place, since there are some levels that feel like a fucking maze with its complex level design. Yes, it's confusing, but that is what games like such as Doom, Quake, Hexen and Heretic were doing at the time with its level design. However, it's not by all means good. Well, since other games made you blow up monsters in a big wide open space, the areas in this game feel very narrow to the point where it's hard to dodge projectiles and get away from the enemies, since they always fucking gang rape you in a dead end. And which is because, and as shown here, it's because of poor level design. This is a perfect example of its design when you activate the switch and that releases a flock of monsters that actually block your exit and fumble you until you're dead, which can be quite fucking annoying on any other difficulty such as normal and hard. Also, it comes to the point where the spawn locations of the enemies can be quite poor, as you enter a room and you blow yourself up with a rocket launcher whilst you shoot an enemy, as there's no space or free time to react whilst you shoot them. Sometimes when you are above a platform, you do have the monsters that can only do melee attacks, running around all confused. Yet that was every enemy AI around the time anyways, since they couldn't climb on one platform to another. The jumping mechanics can be a bit clunky, just trying to get from one platform to another. It could have been better if we can possibly jump higher onto another platform like in Quake, or in Duke Nukem 3D, or even fucking Crouch. But that was something that the developers left out, and it's pretty much a shame that they didn't do that. Also, it's kind of weird how they changed the depth camera to a cornered angle when it looks like the player is taking a nap, to where the camera is above the enemies whilst they still wander around. Now, I mean, this game could have been a classic that you can actually play again on modern PCs if it wasn't for the flaws that were mentioned with the shitty level design and the multiplayer that barely even worked after it's patched to enable multiplayer. since you spawn through the map into an area that you spawned in. Now, I never even played the multiplayer besides the 2 deathmatch maps that in cooperative mode, which actually have monsters included from all 4 episodes. Now, the rest of the maps don't have any enemies placed. And for somebody who hasn't even played the multiplayer online with anyone, I can't really say much about it, to be honest. I mean, check out GGG Beyond's review of the game if you want to know how the multiplayer actually functions. Or should I say, you know, the LAN or whatever, the LAN or whatever. Again, the game itself is hard to run on modern PCs due to its lagging so fucking much while trying to emulate it through DOSBox. Now, I will have to say that there is an alternative, which is a program called Defend Reloaded, which also uses DOSBox, but allows you to tweak it to run smoothly on your system. And I managed to get it working. However, whilst playing it on the lowest resolution, there are still some frame rates that are dropped in large areas whilst loaded entities are placed on the map in big open areas, which is sort of playable unless if you're bothered by the lag in some areas like I am, whilst the game looks like shit. However, running it at the highest resolution makes the game completely unplayable. Just take a look at how it runs on my computer in both resolutions. Exactly, you get the idea that this game runs like a complete turd, unless if it's been played on DOS, as this game was originally made for, or if you could actually run it through Windows 95 or 98 operating system by emulating it using VirtualBox or VMware through a virtual PC. And I'm guessing that it would run much more smoother on an older operating system, since this is one of these games that is so fucking obscure that nobody has even bothered to make a source port, just like other games do, so you can run it on modern systems in a better engine. However, there is something that was considered to be a source port called Open Chasm, which I found in a comment of the main ModDB page for Chasm the Rift. And I guess it is an open source port, but I doubt the person who developed this application hasn't even updated it in forever. So I guess this shit is a work in progress that never got finished. And that goes for my other projects too. Now, you will notice a slight difference from other FPS games such as Quake and Doom, that is, the slime and toxic does exactly as much damage rate as the lava in this game. I mean, it's kind of weird and it doesn't really make that much sense, since back in Doom you would be able to run through the slime at full speed without taking damage whatsoever. And the same thing goes with Quake, and at least they had fucking hazard suits that were placed in some areas of the game. Here though, the radiation suits are not even available in this game. However, we do have the Trojan masks that gives you immortality, kind of like the invulnerability pentagram you collect from Quake, that are not placed as much in this game, as they can be hard to find even at low health. Unless if you actually have one of these masks, it's pretty much impossible, and you will just have to start the level all over again, just like in other games at its time. And it's pretty frustrating at that too, unless you save the game. Also, in case of you guys want to play the Carnivore series, which I haven't even played by the way, I found out that there was a custom add-on that features the super shotgun, and another one featuring the laser crossbow from Action Forum's previously made game Chasm, which looks pretty cool. And if you're a fan of the Carnivores games, then I do recommend you download them and check them out. I haven't yet, but in the future I might make a review on the Carnivores games, but if I can get it working on Windows 10 or 98 whilst using my NVIDIA GTX 1070. Now, a while ago there was an official Chasm website that has game summary, weapons, items, patch and demo downloads and all that fun shit. As of now, for some weird reason, this site is no longer up due to unexplained reason. Luckily enough, it was archived and it is accessible through the Wayback Machine. If you take a look at the site, it's pretty interesting. I mean, that is where everyone got the patch and demo downloads from anyway. And also, if you take a look at the species section, you would see that a lot of the names they came up with the monsters are kind of weird and a little odd. I mean, just take a look at this. Mong.
Stop using the word Mong!
Faust. Stratus. And these are the names for the mutated Marines. Joker, who looks like a jester more than a DC villain we all know. Skeleton? Oh, come the fuck on. There is no way you could have made that mistake unintentionally, to the point when autocorrect can easily fix it. And that goes for year 1 student spelling tests. Maybe the developer's English wasn't that good, or maybe they were drunk. I don't know. Punisher that more likely looks like an executioner in a torture chamber dressed in leather. Well, at least they got the other names right and they actually make fucking sense. Now, excuse me as I make a few adjustments to the page, and there we go. So, do the images I added suit the names that were given? I think they do. At the end of the day, it's kind of depressing that the game didn't get the attention it deserved, because when the developers made an add-on pack with 3 levels that take place in the snowy fortress and a fucking map editor, you can tell that they wanted this game to succeed. in sales, since having a map editor is a good addition to the game, because that is what gives the game replay value. And so far, there were only 2 deathmatch levels made from the editor that are uploaded to the ModDB Chasm the Rift page. Sadly, not many people have played it, and nobody used the editor, and this game today seems pretty much dead at this point, just like the retail copies for System Shock 1 were at one point until it came to Steam in the Enhanced Edition and GOG.com games. Sadly, it did not sell as Action Forums expected it to around the time. I will say this game had potential, and this is what Daikatana should have been. And having 16 levels, not counting the deathmatch and the add-on pack, isn't much gameplay time for retail release, which makes the game pretty short. Now, Quake and Crash Bandicoot had around 32 levels around their release, so I don't think there is any excuse. I would give this game an 8 out of 10, since I will say it's a cult classic that I still adore, yet it does have its problems. Due to this game falling into obscurity pretty fast, it's obviously hard to buy anywhere, so I would just rather download it off a ROM site, Pirate Bay, DOS Games, or even the iSuzo. Would I recommend this game? You'll bet your sweet ass I do, since this game is a must-have classic, and that was pretty amazing and so underrated, but you must play it if you love fast-paced FPS games back in the golden age. And if you love fast-paced FPS games back in the golden age, then pick this up and play the shit out of it. Is it better than Quake? I don't know. I mean, I love both of these games to my heart, and they're so amazing that I don't know which one is better. I mean, if you're going to play it, I would suggest either getting DOSBox, Defend Reloaded, or even emulating Windows 98 to get the best experience and performance out of this sweet-ass game. I would like to see this game come back one day, but who knows? This has been Bazooka79, and I will see you fucking nerds in the near future. Bye, motherfuckers.